Hey everyone, welcome to the Greg Chapman Show. This is a show mainly meant for facilitators and trainers conducting workshops, virtually or face to face, on any kind of behavioral topic from leadership to self awareness to high performing teams, innovation, et al. The idea of this long form conversation is to help fellow facilitators, fellow learners, fellow designers, instructional designers, learn techniques, change mindsets, or bust many facilitation myths. Even tips and tricks find their way into this show. And all of this from facilitators who are masters of their craft from across the world. So if you're starting off, or if you are well into the game, you'll find something here for you. Today's guest is Kinshuk Podar. I hope I've got the pronunciation to that right. Have I, Kinshuk?
You have. Perfect.
And so, Kinshuk, I'm going to introduce my guest in a slightly different way, and I'm going to wind the hands of the clock back to 1989. I was in class six and studying up in the hills, and there was this organization that came to our school. It was known as Air One, and they came to our class and did some nice exercises on innovation and creativity. And ever since that day, the idea of innovation, creativity, and that organization kind of stuck with me. So why am I telling you this? Because Kinshuk has been a facilitator with that was a facilitator with that organization for quite some time, and he's facilitated quite a bit. Overall, he's got more than 2 decades of experience, and he's been a facilitator for an awfully long time. He has facilitated a lot on innovation, strategy, systems thinking, lots and lots of that kind of stuff. He also co-authors books, is a full-time writer, and he tells me on the side while preparing for this that he is writing a small screenplay for a movie. I think it's done, and there's somebody who's interested in it also. He's got a buyer. So yeah, a very big celebrity in the making. And Kinshuk and me actually go back a long time. He's been a good friend as well, and happy to have him here on the show. So welcome to the show, Kinshuk.
Thank you, Greg. Very generous of you. Yeah, it's been such a nice thing to be connecting after so many years. Yeah, we were put 15 years back. We used to work together,
Yes,
and that's
2003,
fantastic. Yeah,
2004. Yes, yes, yes.
and I'm so happy that in this entire podcast universe, there are hardly any uh, dedicated facilitation podcasts.
Mm.
So, or probably I am not aware, but this is a fantastic beginning or a fantastic thing that you're doing. Yeah. Many congratulations. I hope that's a. I mean, this entire breed of facilitators per se is by temperament very reflective people, right? Very
Mm.
introspective people. So introvertish, if you will. So it always helps to share, talk, listen with fellow facilitators. So in that regard, this is a great thing that you're doing. Yeah, fantastic. Yeah,
Thank
fantastic.
you, Kinshuk. It's a separate breed. I agree with that. And there's a lot of reflection. And what I like to think, I'm sure it's true for other disciplines as well, other roles as well. But what I like to think is that if you've been in facilitation long enough, it changes you as a person for the better, but it changes you as a person. Yeah. And
True.
with that, I'd like to segue into asking you, Kinshuk, how has facilitation changed you as a person?
Sure. So, a quick context, uh, like you did mention, Erwan, great innovation consulting company. Thereafter, I had some good amount of time in IBM with Wipro, where I used to deliver leadership sessions, facilitate senior leadership. Uh, so, I've had the good privilege of uh, talking to groups inside this country and outside. And what happens across so many number of years is you somehow get a sense of a palpable sense of this thirst for change. When you meet these participants across geographies, across designations, across hierarchies, what is unmistakably felt is that almost everybody wants to change for the better. So no matter what the naysayers may say, that there's a lot of resistance in the human system against change, that's not necessarily true. uh, Once we move past the barriers of the thought and the heart, you will find that almost everybody in us has this huge desire uh, to be better, stronger in mind and body. Yeah. So how has it changed me? Is the first recognition that this business of change is one very complex. So it needs a certain degree of seriousness, uh, uh, seriousness in your personal life, and seriousness also in the kind of sessions that a person conducts. So, because change is nothing which happens overnight, right? So there's a fair admission which happens that a person needs to go ahead and apply himself to the very practices a person is talking about in the classes. So for me, this entire facilitation has been a very serious dedication towards change. So it's just not only on the cosmetic level, it's something which is far more sustainable. There are aspects of how do you weave them into your daily practice. So this entire preparedness of at times pain, at times struggle. Uh, so all of this as a commitment has been strengthened within me, Greg, for all these years. This entire commitment and preparation to make change a reality in my own life, uh, that wouldn't have been so rock solid or serious had I not been in the profession of facilitation. So I hope that answers your question. Uh, and in terms of on a temperamental and on a behavioral level, uh, when I look back at my younger self, there have been plenty of things which I can relate to. One is embracing silence, for example. Initially, the younger me, there was this huge desire to go ahead and fill in the conversation, complete people's thoughts, complete people's sentences, right? That doesn't happen so much now in the present, right? uh, Initially or earlier on, it used to be that I used to more listen to answer, not listen to understand or listen to empathize. That shift is far more uh, evident for me today. Um, Another kind of shift was being able to differentiate between the barriers of the mind versus barriers of the heart. You know, uh, a lot of times people confuse when they hit a roadblock or when they meet a reversal. The confusion happens between is it a mind challenge, is it a heart challenge? Uh, that that perception or the discernment as an ability has grown stronger in me with the years of facilitation. Uh, then things around the concept of flexibility of will, if you may. Initially, earlier on, the younger me, there used to be a very black and white understanding of this thing called will, as in you put in your entire might behind a thing till the time it happens, right? No matter what the costs might be. As with facilitation and with time, I've learned that there's a very important nuance to that will, which is its dynamicity, its flexibility. Uh, how do you know when what is enough and what is when do you know how to surrender? So all these aspects around, let's say, will has become far more clearer to me since I began. So all of these, like I said, it's a work in progress. This entire science of facilitation, if you will, is actually a work in progress, right? No change is lasting, like they say, right? No change is lasting, and no change is final. We are forever learning, right? So those are some of the behavioral or temperamental things which come to my mind, which have helped me as with time, uh, facilitating various groups. Then a higher degree of acceptance of the present is another huge learning for me, when it comes to facilitation. Acceptance of the present is how do you stay rooted in the presence and try to bring your sensing abilities to what wants to emerge in that moment, right? I mean, there's this initially the younger me again was very fixed in terms of planning something and executing something in a very linear, logical, sequential way, right? That as a attribute or behavior has softened over a period of time. Now, now the now I do have a plan. There's a certain amount of thought in terms of approach, in terms of an execution timeline, and all of that exists. But what has also come is the ability to be alive to the present for uh, true creativity to come through, you know, not being so adamant on or putting on your blinders and just following a preconceived path. Uh, so that's another example of how facilitation has changed me again. But that's enough about me, I guess. But because you know, every single day that we go through, there are so many various aspects which get unearthed, right? When we take these classes, or when we work one on one, or when we work with groups, uh, we there are so many intangibles. There are so many um, ephemeral, uh, ineffable things, which is very difficult to pinpoint, right? I call them the spiritual aspect of facilitation.
Mm.
I mean, there are plenty of books, there are plenty of things around the tips and tricks of facilitation or the various best practices.
Mm.
And I'm probably not the best person to talk on them because those have never been my primary area of interest when it comes to facilitation. My
Mm.
primary area has always been the spiritual aspect around facilitation. How does it make you fundamentally a better person, or a stronger person, or a wiser person? And so the more that I have spent time around this practice, I have understood that uh, the spiritual aspects are some things which liberate you even outside the classroom,
Mm.
even outside the session. They are far more applicable in your family life and your non-professional life, and as you interact with uh, you know non-colleagues.
Mm.
And that for me becomes far more important because we have this huge this is my work and that is my life divide.
Mm.
And unless our ability to help people make a change when they cross over from the office to the home, if it's not that potent, if it's not that effective, then I'm not so sure if it's change deep enough, if it's change sustainable enough. And depth and sustainability are some things which come to my mind when you consider the aspects of the uh, spiritual aspects, if you will, the metaphysical aspects, if you
Right.
will. So when it comes to all those aspects, my learning has been that uh, when we used to step into these group classes or group sessions,
Mm.
this first, how do you observe human behavior? You observe human behavior. Uh, let's say you begin a session, you get all this excitement and eager people wanting to learn, and it's day one, it's hour one, and these are diverse group of people. Some of them know each other in the room, but most of them don't know each other in the room. Everybody wants to be seen as a eager learner, if you will. But what happens immediately in the first hour is a lot of download happens when you do those typical introductions, for example, when you do those typical icebreaker sessions, if you will. You find a very downloading behavior, meaning they're operating from the past. They're very, very conscious about the kind of image or the kind of a mask that each one of us has. And that's what we want to project, right? So the first order of the day is observe. So when people observe over a period of time, you find this downloading behavior start to wear off, probably in the first few hours, something. Thereafter, when you start to talk about the deeper aspects, let's say you're doing a technical session on some leadership skills or behavioral skills or time management skills, or any kind of a module for that matter, the dynamic of the participation changes. After a certain while, you will find that the download behavior is less and the debate behavior comes in. Debate, as in, there's a certain amount of roughness, there's a certain amount of uh, uh, combativeness, you know. So you will find that a few people in the group will start to demonstrate certain amount of debating behaviors, right? Then from download, then you'll find a lot of people dropping off, and a few in the group, by virtue of either their hierarchy in the organization or by virtue of their personality or their articulation abilities, no matter what the factor might be, you will find them debating, right?
Yeah.
So then you will find after a certain amount of time, as you progress deeper, you will find from debate, the Germans have a word for it. In fact, not a single word. I mean, the word in English is mm, magic moment. In German, it's called magistra artem.
Mhm.
I hope that's correct. Magistra artem, if my memory serves me right. So these are this is magic moments. So what I'm essentially trying to say, if a facilitator uh, knows his craft well,
Mhm.
if he's prepared well for it, because I believe it's usually a 1:2 kind of a ratio. So for each hour that you spend facilitating, you've got to spend 2 hours for preparing. You know,
Mhm.
uh, and so at deeper levels of conversation from debate, the next level, if a magic moment were to happen, will be dialogue. Dialogue is reflective behavior. You will find people pausing more. You will find people not cutting the other guy. Debate is a very combative activity. Debate is, I'm wrong, I'm right, you're wrong, right? It presumes that we both can't win. Debate wins that the winner takes all, right?
Mhm.
So, but when you go down a level deeper, if a magic moment happens, then you will find far more dialoguing which starts to happen, which is a reflective behavior. You will find people stopping and checking and checking for assumptions, and which is a far more productive activity, right? So in facilitation, you will find these kind of stages coming.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thereafter, if you really go down, so the important point between debate and dialogue is, you've got to create, as a facilitator, you've got to create a circle of safety. That's very important.
Yeah.
If a person doesn't feel safe, he or she will not dialogue. He will debate. He or she will say his piece, and depending on the response that he receives, he may either shut off, or he may get more aggressive, or
Mhm.
he may get more energetic, right, or more enthusiastic.
Yeah.
But what happens is, in a debate, you will have energy spilling off.
Right.
But in a dialogue, the energies work inwards, and when it works inwards, as a facilitator, you've got to be very observant, very tuned into the moment to understand, how do I create a circle of safety? Because if a circle of safety starts to happen, you'll find more and more participants slipping into the dialoguing process.
Right.
Dialoguing is the art of thinking together. uh, so there is a far more emphasis on trying to understand what the other guy wants to say, even if he or she can't use the language or find the words, right?
I just want to catch this, Kinshuk, because you've given us something extremely nice and potent and something that we can use. It's like stages in facilitation, stages of the
Sure,
workshop, but from a not from a design perspective, but
sure.
from a facilitation perspective. So what I hear you say is what you're first calling the download, um, and then you're going into debate. And I just wanted to summarize it well for our listeners. And I think there's a huge takeaway here. So you go from download, where people are coming in to the present by bringing their past, by bringing their masks, and um, post which you're getting into a little bit of a debate kind of phase, and then I've added my word to this, saying it's a sign up moment, where you either have people signing up or some people signing up to what you're saying, and perhaps others dropping off, and then magistra artem. I'm going to check that one out.
Please,
The
sure,
magic
sure.
moment. I'm going to check the pronunciation out. The magic moment, and finally giving rise to dialogue. So I think that's the entire circle that
There's actually a couple of steps more.
okay.
S- but you're right. So the important thing as a facilitator to understand is between download and debate, you will have the forces of resistance coming from your mind, from your brain.
You
So
speaking
you
of
have to respond
facilitator
in,
as in the
yeah,
person?
as a facilitator, if you observe, people uh, do not come down to debate if their preconceived ideas or their mind or the logical
Mhm.
system per se blocks them.
Mhm.
So you've got to respond accordingly. The-
So can you give us an example of what according means? So you're saying as a facilitator, I can feel this, as you say, there is
sure.
resistance. The moment somebody challenges you, and that first little while is perhaps the toughest sometimes,
Sure,
establishing your
sure.
cred. So how do you, you've
So
spoken of staying in the
prima
moment, so
facie,
how do you do that?
sorry, yeah,
Yeah.
sure. So prima facie, you address the same system from which the resistance comes from. So if a person is stuck, and you can clearly see the stuckness is happening because of voices of judgment,
Mhm.
judgment, which is a very mental process. It's not a heart process, it's a mental process.
Mhm.
So if you have to untangle that person's resistance or his block or his barrier, you got to engage with him at a mind, at a brain, at a logical level. And so no matter as to what the debate, so no matter what the stalemate might be, it's important to understand if the person's talking from his mind or from his heart. Most likely in most events, in that stage, he will be blocked by his mental processes because he's seen the way in a certain way. His worldview is a very separate from yours.
Mhm.
That's why he's downloading. That's why he's repeating all that he has learned through years of seeing and observing. There's nothing right or wrong. It's only his POV. Is his POV against your POV. So the voices will be more of reason, of rationale, and you've got to untangle them. If that's what the requirement of the moment is, you've got to untangle them from a reason and a rational point of view. But from debate to downwards to dialogue, that magic moment happens if the heart opens.
Mm. Yeah.
If a person uses his heart, and if he or she gives that permission, if first of all, it will only happen if there's a circle of safety,
Right.
because heart means vulnerability. You're talking about sensitivities, you're talking about far more softer aspects, far more intangible aspects, far more fleeting aspects. See, ideas.
You're giving us so much. I just want to go back a little bit and
Sure,
say somebody's stuck. Sorry to bump in there.
no, please.
Suppose somebody's stuck,
Sure.
and you're saying you need to go into, where that person is coming from. I would imagine doesn't happen by too much of tell, right? Would happen by a lot of ask. And I'm going to give an example, but first I'm going to give you a question. I'm going to come back to the question, give you some time to think about it. My question is, so are there any powerful questions that you can use through cut through that to really get into that person's skin? For me, for example, I'll give you something that happened recently. I was in a I was in a leadership workshop, just COVID's there, but it has opened up a little bit, and we were tucked away in the hills. And after the workshop, there's this gentleman comes up to me and says, Greg, do you think it's important to cultivate humility? Right?
Hmm.
Something
Hmm.
as out there as that. And, everything in me said, to respond very quickly and say, hey, are you kidding me? Or, yeah, of course it is important, or give 5 examples. And, all that's happening at the back of my head. And saying, so one part of me is saying, what a stupid fellow. The other part saying, okay, prove him wrong, or prove the point that you're trying to make, right? And what I said was, what I asked him was, it was actually a question. I didn't say anything. What I asked him was, why is that question important for you? And right then and there, what you're nicely explaining, whatever is happening inside the guy's head just came rushing forth. He untangled that ball of wool himself. Where he's coming from, and he's
Sure,
in
sure.
knots. He untangled it himself. But I'm saying that came from um, a good, powerful question. A, of course, recognizing that all of this is happening in my head, and what the hell do I want to do with this? And then be there for that person, of course, but also a powerful question. So could you give us, maybe, could you help the audience with something that's worked for you?
Hmm. So, uh, these are very, I mean, the example that you just gave is a very powerful example of a delayering question, right? You're delayering it.
Mm.
And all these questions are important, like the very one that you just said. Why is it important for you? Or what do you think? Any questions which can delayer the other person's assumptions
Mhm.
is a great point to start.
Yeah.
Why do you say that, or what makes you say that, or uh, has anything happened in your past that makes you say that?
Mm.
Anything which delayers a person,
Mhm.
because the idea is to go down even further down. See, right now, like I said, downloading to debate is essentially a characteristic when the mind is not open
Mm.
primarily. If through delayering techniques, if through reflecting techniques, if through questions which open up the person,
Mhm.
a magic moment were to happen, he or she will come down to the dialoguing aspect of it.
Mhm.
And the dialoguing aspect is essentially an exercising of opening the heart.
Mm.
And then once you go down even further down, you go down to a very sacred space in which you will get into a sensing moment. Sensing moment meaning the group or a one-on-one, he or she will get a palpable sense of the here and the now,
Right.
which is a will, which is an opening of the will moment.
So are you saying from dialogue to sacred space? Are you?
Dialogue to, yeah, I mean, from dialogue to something called sensing. The verb, it's an active verb.
Mhm.
So sensing means you are present in the here and now, you're very rooted, and you're also trying to figure out what new wants to emerge out of you in that moment. It's a very creative process, so hence it's a very
Lovely.
sacred process.
Yeah.
So the minds have to be open, and the hearts have to be open for the will to be open, because at the end of the day, once a person sees a new aspect of his or her problem as to
Mm.
what his challenge is primarily with his own eyes per se,
Right.
the same person can then sense the solution of the answer to his challenge.
Right.
And for that penny drop moment to happen,
Right.
the shift has to move from a safety into a sacred space, wherein what happens is, uh, first the voices of if you look at the iceberg model, you will first see the voices of judgment stopping a conversation.
Mhm.
Then you will find the voices of cynicism
Mhm.
stopping the process.
Mhm.
And then even if you go down even more further, you will find the voices of system stopping the process,
Mhm.
meaning the voice of system meaning uh, all the experiences that a person has had over a period of time in his life uh, are like gravity. They suck him down. So when I'm talking about system, I'm talking about his value system, his belief system, uh, all those nuances that he has lived through, that he or she has lived through right from when he was a child. So
So I'm
that
thinking.
is the, yeah.
Sorry. So I'm thinking this is a great way of constructing a questioning technique. So one, if there's some more reading on delayering techniques, would love to hear it. And as you
Sure.
speak, I'm just thinking to myself, judgment, cynicism, values. This is where people are operating out of, right?
True, true,
Um,
true.
as reading this off of a non-violent communication video, that anything that we do in this world comes from one word, and that is a need, right? And around that need, we've been conditioned, taught, whatever, to operate out of judgments, operate out of good and bad, and should and should not, and so on and so forth. So what I hear you say is, something similar. People are operating out of judgment or cynicism or values, and I'm just thinking, if we've set up some kind of a context like this, saying this is where you operate out of upfront, and then as the workshop progresses, and you're hitting a point of debate, um, it could be interesting to inquire into a person's mind by saying, okay, we're going to come to that. Um, but where is it that that question is coming from? Is it coming from a closely held something that you're taught at a very early age? Is it coming from something you've read? Is it coming from an experience? Is it coming from cynicism? And if you're setting up the whole vulnerability thing, so what do you say to this? Does this seem to resonate, work from your experience?
See, it does. It does. See, as the 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 one skill which most facilitators start to grow like
Mhm.
a muscle
Mhm.
is the ability to deal your intent in a person's
Mm.
conversation. That intent seeking
Yeah.
behavior
Mhm.
is absolutely critical for a facilitator.
Very well
So
put.
as you talk to more and more people over a period of time, uh, it's we know
Yeah.
intuitively as to where the guy is coming from. So you'll know either if it's judgment, which means that his mind is at play, his brain, his logic processes, rationale, reason. If you find that a person is just unwilling because there's certain amount of cynicism in his voice, which is both a quality of tone, a quality of articulation, a quality of the usage of words and all of that, then you know it's a heart issue, that he or she is unwilling to open his heart because he or she has been pained before. There's been some kind of a story there, right? So intent is paramount. Intent is paramount. And how do you do that? So it's a constant mirroring techniques that we all learn in facilitation, right? uh, Over a period of time, as the workshop progresses, in your body language, in your behavior, in your engagement, uh, as you as a facilitator start to immerse yourself in that moment, you will find the participants also doing that to a certain extent. That's the magic of mirror. See,
Lovely.
mask gives you masks, mirrors gives you mirrors.
Yeah.
uh, so it depends as to what level of vulnerability do you also as a facilitator wants to immerse your own self.
Right.
uh, it always begins first. The
Right.
first step has to come from the facilitator,
Right.
and then over a period of time you've got to. It's like jazz. I would want to say it as jazz. We don't know, if you see this group of musicians who combine together, they themselves don't know which instrument is going to take the lead a second
Mm.
later.
Right.
They're performing at a high degree of intuitiveness.
Yeah.
Now, how does it happen? Nobody's got a science behind it. It's
Mm.
it's sheer practice. It's sheer passion towards their craft,
Yeah.
and they are beyond a state of blame, or they are beyond a state of even reason, for that matter.
Right.
I'm talking about the jazz guys.
Yeah.
It's a very similar process, a very very similar process here, also. Because the point I'm trying to make here is, unless we reach that
Mhm.
that point at the bottom, which is sensing,
Mhm.
wherein the person sees the problem and sees the solution in a single snapshot,
Mhm.
the change will not start to happen.
Yeah.
Because what I'm saying is, you got the mind, and then you got the heart, and then you got the will.
Right.
So unless we make that journey to that point, the penny drop moment,
Right.
there's no way of coming up then. Because if I go back from the session just repeating my same problems, that I procrastinate, or I say I just can't give up smoking, or if I go back and say I just can't do this skill, I'm very poor at delegation, for
Mhm.
example, or if I say that I'm not an empathetic manager, or whatever my challenge might be, if I
Mhm.
go back after the session repeating the same problems or the
Mhm.
problem statements, not even knowing that the solution does exist in me, not
Mhm.
even having seen the solution with my mental eyes, then change is not going to happen.
Right.
The results going to be fine. You'll eat fine, you'll drink fine, you'll make a lot of friends, you will do networking, you will write all those affirmation statements, you'll make accountability partners. All that song and dance is going to happen.
Mhm.
But the next Monday,
Mm.
almost nothing is going to change,
That is right.
because the person hasn't sensed his solution, his his
Right.
his key. Because unless you see
Mhm.
the the reason why the block has been happening in me,
Mm.
there is nothing that the will can change. What will the will change?
Absolutely.
So what needs to happen is, that degree of vulnerability, that degree of sacredness has to be
Sacredness, yes.
present present in the space.
Yeah, true.
Otherwise, you will not have the creative forces of the universe cooperating in that moment. I see. I'm in the business of writing. Why do all those millions of writers, successful writers or unsuccessful writers, why is it their number one tip? You ask a Salman Rushdie, you ask a Ernest Hemingway, they always say the only commitment the writer has
Mm,
is to sit and write.
mm.
uh, Rest everything about the grammar, the craft, the style, the mechanics, the practices can wait. But the point is, get up in the morning and, like any other job, go to your desk, open up your laptop or your pen and paper and pencil and write. Because that's the number one rule. If you're a writer, you write,
Yeah,
and you will find this, because that's how the universe cooperates with you.
yeah. That's a great takeaway for me, actually. And I'm struggling. So I've got John McPhee's fourth draft on my table, trying to read through that stuff. I'm struggling with structure, mechanics, how do you write? And then I just start writing and all that's forgotten. And I'm wondering, how the hell am I going to write? How am I going to remember all those things? So yeah, you're speaking to that very kindly. Thank you for that. And Kinshuk, there's 100 places I could go from here. I just have two questions
Sure.
for you. So one is, um, you've mentioned safe place, and I think that's extremely important. So Google, as you know, did this project. I think it's called the Aristotle Project. I may be wrong, where they threw huge dollars, lots and lots of dollars at finding out what makes great teams. And at the end of it, what they came out was not IQ, not diversity, yes, but not as much. But one of the things that emerged head and shoulders above everything else was psychological safety.
Hmm. True,
Now,
true.
I hear you say that. I also hear you use another term, sacredness.
Sure.
So, very quickly, if you could just help us, is there a difference? Could you delineate the two for us? That would be nice.
So sure. See, the point is, safe is primarily, how do you bring inclusion? How do you unleash the forces of inclusivity in that group, in that session, in that class?
Mhm.
Now, you do inclusivity by various techniques. You could use humor. You could use various kind of physical activities. You could play games, all of that. But over a period of time, the idea is to include people's best parts in the conversation. you know so safety means, see, no matter what flaws, weaknesses, limitations I might have, it's my commitment to bring the best part of me to the session, to the group. So once you sense that in the group happening, that people are willfully respecting other people's spaces and privacy, you will know that the space is getting more and more safe.
Right.
uh, I could tell you a lot of other techniques, but then it'll take a lot of time, right? But all I'm trying to say is, the texture is, I'm willing to bring the best part of me to the discussion here and now,
Mhm.
which will mean I would want to be treated the same way that I'm going to treat you, and vice versa. It's as simple as that. It is just respect for the other person's space and presence. It's a great um, affirmation of acceptance. So you will get this. You will get this when the space starts to get safe and safe. Psychological safety, like you rightly pointed out.
Right.
Sacredness is even more deeper,
Mhm.
wherein you will find some of the measures uh, of far deeper relaxation in the environment.
Mhm.
uh, Safe will be a person making efforts to tune in, to understand as to where the other person's coming from, check for assumptions, realign his or her own priorities, and all of that. That's safety. But as that thing deepens, what happens is, uh, the sacred space, the effort goes down. It's far more effortless tuning which happens. One. And two, far more important is the attention leaves the other person and goes to the space itself. What
Wow.
is the space trying to tell me? What is the forces of the universe or the energy trying to tell me? What is the creative aliveness in the space telling me? It's a deeper form of meditation, if you will. Now, that space is sacred. So, unless you get down to that space, which is very sacred, you
Yeah.
will not be able to see the solution to your problem.
Right.
So see, these are very, very gradual moving moments.
So, in a
Uh,
sense, if I may, in a sense, what I hear you say is when you're approaching safety, safety has got a lot to do with respect. Uh, Respecting my own self, having a little bit of, or a lot bit of compassion for my flaws, and in spite of those flaws, bringing my best to the space and feeling safe to do that. Also respecting the other person doing that, right? Um, Recognizing that the other person also mirroring, it's like a mirror. The other person's also got that, and bringing that,
Absolutely, absolutely,
and checking for assumptions. These are some good indicators that that you've actually given us and the viewers of this. So checking for some assumptions and looking out for assumptions and training your brain to say, oh, hold on a second, what you just said, let's roll back. Was there an assumption in that? Was there a judgment in that? Do you want to reframe that? Do you want to rephrase that? Do you want to inject some,
absolutely,
you know?
absolutely,
So that's your safety. And we can go get some more parameters in there, but broadly, that's your safety. Now, when you move from there and say, so two things as you were talking came to my mind. One, the effort kind of goes down. You're more tuned. You use the example of jazz a little while back. So you're more tuned into the space. Somewhere it strikes a chord with me. You didn't say it as much. I'm sure. Let me know if this is also where you're coming from. It is also, so there is empathy for self, empathy for other, but now you got empathy self, you got empathy for other. Now you got empathy for the space, you know,
absolutely,
and that's a whole different piece. It's like when you go into a holy place, you know, uh, irrespective of whichever religion you're from, you feel that because there's that empathy, that respect for that place. That place got power. So many people go
absolutely. You
that.
actually nailed it very well. It's empathy for the space. Like the primary engagement moves from the person onto the space itself, because that's the sacred space in which your problems have hit a fertile ground, and
Right.
the answers will come out of that space itself. Are you listening strong enough? Because see, that's the point where the will has to be unleashed. The will can only be unleashed uh, when you see the solution
Right.
and when the group together see the solution.
Mm.
See, Greg, this process becomes extremely powerful for group sessions,
Mm.
wherein you're working with the C-suite in a company, for example, and they're grappling with some serious existential questions for the company itself.
Right.
These are questions of sales and revenue and new products and business growth and all of that. And they, as a group, have been wanting to make a breakthrough.
Mhm.
So at this stage, typically what I found is these C-suite start to engage at such a deep level of uh, heart and mind,
Mhm.
uh, that they make breakthroughs which they knew they had inside of themselves come out
Mm.
together. So this process per se works extremely well if there's a common challenge, if there's a common problem that the group is facing.
Right.
I mean, it works equally well for a one-on-one kind of a thing. But what I'm trying to say is this entire notion of this circle of sanctity, uh, this fertile ground works very well if you've got a three, four, five inner circle of people brainstorming or working through a particularly uh, recalcitrant problem.
Hard nosed, left brained,
Absolutely
recalcitrant
hard
problem.
nosed, left brained, all of that, all of that,
It's
all of
the
that.
right brain that also gets you through.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Interesting. And,
Because from because after the stage, what starts to happen is when you start to glimpse the solution, you will start to have ideas around that vision that you all saw together, and
right.
from there on, you'll crystallize ideas, new ideas, and then you get onto the prototyping stage. You will try and experiment with these ideas. You will put them on the ground, maybe in a sandbox environment, and from the prototyping you will get some far more new strategies to mainstream. You know what I'm trying to say? So 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 we're just talking about the glimpsing of the solution, and then thereafter the ideating, etc., starts to happen.
Interesting. You've left me with some thoughts. You've left me with some questions. I just want to ask you so many techniques. You spoke of techniques, and maybe
We could talk separately on techniques for all each of these stages,
let's
because if you get down to them, they get
yeah,
far more detailed.
lovely.
One and two, these aren't cookie cutter.
These aren't
These
cookie cutter.
shouldn't be cookie cutter.
Yeah.
We should all step into the classroom, like I said, prepare like it's a 1:2 ratio. So for every group that I should talk to, has to be far more tuned into their professionals, their background. We used to do a lot of leadership questionnaires. We used to ask a lot of personal data even before these guys used to step into the classroom.
Got that.
One. Two, we used to spend enough amount of time, irrespective of our own business understanding, we used to make the attempt to understand the business landscape per se. So our questioners used to capture their hard-nosed problem in detail, even before we began.
Right.
So we used to have preliminary interviews with them even before the session. So all that is part of the preparation, right? And thereafter we used to go ahead
What
and
I
have
see you
this.
say is connecting two dots. What you said right now, what you said earlier on, is that it's kind of like a tightrope walk between preparation, structure, going deeper, and then when you're there on the stage with your instrument, you know, going back to the jazz metaphor, you're also emergent and letting all that preparation, in a sense, be or go, you know, as with what comes up. It's a little, perhaps it's a little advanced. I don't know if I want to box it into that, and I'm leaving it up to the viewers to, you know, label it or not. But to me, yes, it takes a while to do that. Kinshuk, I also want to say that I want to explore some of these later on the show next, you know, keep it going for subsequent shows, and maybe we can just do some small little building blocks of this. There's lots of stuff which people could benefit from.
Sure.
Final piece is that 2003. I remember you used to read about a book a week, and judging from the books at the back of you, I think that's gone up. All right, so. We've spoken about a lot of stuff. What are a few books you would recommend to a facilitator to really up her or his game? You know, whether it's in the
So
spiritual space or empathy or making it safe. Yeah.
So, Greg, there's an ocean of it there. Yeah, there's an ocean. I mean, some of the ones that have really influenced me, I've just pulled them out for this. So, before, there's an entire series by this Vietnamese Buddhist monk, right? It's a
Thich
difficult
Nhat
name to pronounce. Thich Nhat Hanh.
Hanh, yeah.
Thich Nhat Hanh.
Yeah.
And he does these very tiny 6 inches by 6 inches kind of books, how to sit, how to talk. These are very 20 40 pages kind of books, okay. And they have deep spiritual exercises in them, but extremely simple. It's extremely applicable to present day life. So this is his entire series, how to love, how to sit, how to think. It may look second nature. We are humans and we take these things for granted.
Is the
That's a
series
great
called something? Sorry, is it called something?
uh, it's a how to something.
Okay.
It's a how to, yeah,
Yeah.
how to think and how to sleep and how to talk.
Right.
Tiny books. These are pocket books, tiny, and great for rooting yourself in the here and now. Like I said, the best facilitators mm, have to have that enormous ability to be able to tune in and root in. Uh, just a second nature. It has to be absolute second nature. So to that extent, it should be very meditative.
Yeah.
So it requires a very high degree of self-awareness. Absolutely. It requires a very high degree of self-regulation.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It requires a very high degree of being extremely soft as clay. being absolutely empty.
Mm.
So all of that as a meditative practices are very well served by these books. At least for me, they have been books of meditation by a variety of Eastern scholars, by Western scholars.
So before you
Uh,
go ahead, sorry, I just want to, I Googled it up very quickly and I found that it's called the five best-selling handbooks of Thich Nhat Hanh's. Uh,
okay,
Here's the name, Mindfulness Essentials series. I'll repeat that. Thich
yeah,
Nhat
yeah,
Hanh,
yeah.
Mindfulness Essentials series, how to sit, how to eat, how to walk, how to love, and how to relax. These are five
So there you go.
separate books. Yeah.
Very see the point is like we began by speaking. We're in the business of change.
Mhm.
So if a facilitator is not a living, breathing example of change himself or herself,
Mhm.
then you're losing a very huge opportunity.
Right.
You know, you're losing a very huge opportunity to influence people
Mhm.
in that space in those 3 days or in those 2 days that you're conducting, right?
Right.
Uh, so Pema
Mhm.
Chodron is another very celebrated Buddhist. Uh, she is a woman. She writes extremely simply. Again, very complex, abstract things brought to life in a very matter of fact way. Beautiful. Pema Chodron writes anything that you pick up on Pema Chodron, similar flavor, similar nature.
Yeah.
I would definitely
She's done a
recommend
nice
those.
series with Oprah, Soul Sunday series with Oprah,
Nice. I think so. I've heard about it. Yeah, yeah.
and there's a nice book called Welcoming the Unwelcome. It's a
Welcoming them.
small
Yeah,
thin book, so that's amazing. I just finished it a couple of weeks back. So yeah,
fantastic. So,
complete
so for me,
excellent book, excellent book. Yeah.
books by Shunryu Suzuki,
Okay.
the Zen master. Books by D.T. Suzuki, another Zen master. Books by
Watts, Alan Watts.
Alan Watts, absolutely Alan Watts. So any person who's in the business of meditation, reflection,
Mhm.
transcendental meditation, even some of the Hindu scholars, for that matter, some Christian
Who's a good
theologians,
Hindu scholar?
you will have a book called I Am That. I Am That is written by. I have it here. The, it's a very famous. I mean, the book's title is I Am That,
Mhm.
and it's a question and answer FAQ. The entire book's an FAQ.
Mhm.
It talks about mind, talks about heart, it talks about soul, it talks about human action, free will,
Oh.
destiny. So see, the point is facilitation is fundamentally about self-knowledge, self-awareness, and self-regulation.
Mm.
These three. And these are lifelong practices. And these aren't so much theory, they're far more practices, right? So as a facilitator, if we imbibe these kind of practices every single day of our lives, we will definitely be far better facilitators
Mm.
because these are the basic building blocks.
Right.
uh, and no matter what technical area that you may be facilitating, uh, the building block are these three, for example. So these are some of the books. I can give you an entire list later, you can post it someplace, yeah.
Yes, yes, that would be
But
good.
these will be easily Eastern or Western texts around mindfulness, primarily mindfulness. I could give
Sounds
you about 25, 30 or
oh
titles.
lovely. That'll be good. That'll be
Sure,
very
sure,
good.
sure, sure.
I Am That is by Nisarga Datta.
Nisarga Datta Maharaj, correct,
Yes,
correct.
thanks for the
I am
pronunciation.
that Nisarga Datta Maharaj, and
And Alan Watts has got a lots and lots of
lots and his
videos
book.
on YouTube.
There you go, absolutely. I discovered him through the book he named The Book. That's the name of the book, The Book. And therein he challenges our, I mean, he spent his entire life challenging assumptions, challenging our love and attachment with reality, the way we see it. That was his life's work. He was a Zen monk. He again came
Yeah.
back to England. He was an artist himself, all of that. So yeah, so I can give you the entire list for you to definitely post. Yeah.
Right.
Apart from that, if you want to talk about, I've been a mm, huge learner of systems thinking, of how quantum mechanics influences uh, human thinking.
Hmm.
So any books by David Bohm, for example. We remember
Of course.
you and I used to talk about David Bohm
Oh, yes, 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 yes.
15, 18 years back.
Yeah.
So thought as a system, David Bohm, I'll definitely recommend. There's
Thought
this
of this.
fantastic book called Dialogue by by William
Bomb.
Isaacs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, 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 yes.
Then there's this lovely book called From Being to Doing by Humberto R. Maturana.
Mhm.
And that's another book around, these are all books around system thinking,
Yeah.
organizational design. These are all around, if I mean, they all begin from the premises. The more that we look closely at our own thinking
Mhm.
and perceiving the world through thinking as a discipline, the more that we are in command of the change we want to bring in. I mean, that's the basic premise for all of these, basically.
Absolutely.
Then there are books by Margaret Wheatley. Margaret Wheatley,
Weekly, like the week, Monday, Tuesday,
wheat, the crop,
crop,
Wheatley.
weekly. Okay.
Yeah. So she's got a couple of books. Her one book that I have read and I've always liked is called A Simpler Way.
A simpler way.
A
Margaret.
Simpler Way. Yeah. And you've got The Fifth Discipline by Peter Senge. Uh, and that's again a mm, very powerful book. Yeah.
It's a complicated as hell book.
It's comprehensive. So the trick is to just read bits and pieces which talk to you for
Yeah,
that moment,
that is
really.
true.
Yeah. So I mean, depending as to where your interests have
Absolutely.
lain, over a period of years, yeah. But for me, I don't know, books of like I said, philosophy, psychology, philosophy, mindfulness, anything which I can apply.
Yeah,
Just not for the sheer joy and the pleasure of finding another person's mind. That's definitely a great high, but the material by itself has to be very usable,
mm,
usable in your line of work. That's very important for me. So all of these have enormously helped me. Then you've got obviously theory you Otto Scharmer,
mm,
a very new way of, he says, how do you manage the how do you create a future reality by immersing yourself in it. That's what he
mm.
said. How do you emerge yourself with the future which is wanting to come out of you in that moment.
I've got to read
So
that. Yeah,
so
I've got to
another
read that.
theory you or Otto Schama. And I mean,
I think
there are
there's some
loads, there are
training
loads.
programs around that as well. But I got to read the U theory.
There are training yes, they
Yeah,
have facilitation sessions and classes and all of that.
yeah. Good,
Absolutely.
good, good. I'll wait for that list and I'll put it up. And I'm going to put it up on my YouTube
Do that.
channel
There's
as
one
well.
more which talks about the cognitive sciences and human experiences. It's called The Embodied Mind
Hmm.
by this guy called Francisco J. Varela.
Okay.
Francisco J. Varela.
Francis.
Yeah, The Embodied Mind.
Okay. J. Varela. Okay.
So yeah, I mean, these are guys who are essentially uh, trying to decipher or demystify the human experience
Hmm.
themselves. They're trying to tell us, if we can change our experience,
Hmm.
then we get the handle on change themselves.
Mm.
The kind of stories that we tell ourselves as we go through life, uh, those are the same stories which shape us, right?
Yeah.
So if we can change the stories that we tell us,
Right.
we will be able to master change
Yeah.
again. And how do you do it? You do it through um, understanding what makes up human experience.
Absolutely.
So all of that, yeah,
And just
all of
going
that.
back to what you said in the training room, actually, when there is debate, actually getting a person to reflect on what story is what that person is saying coming from. That's a good
True, true, true.
inquiry question. Good, Kinshuk. It's been so nice talking to you, and after a
Great.
long time, and looking forward to doing a few, if not many more.
Absolutely. I mean, the next time around, if we do, decide on a certain area that we want to
Yeah,
deep dive in terms of the practice of, let's say,
yeah,
moving people from download to debate, from debate,
oh, yeah.
sorry, from debate to dialogue, and even further down, we could delve into it specifically. Yeah?
Oh, that would be super, super.
Mm,
Looking forward to that, Kinshuk.
sure, sure.
Yeah. So. Thank
Hopefully
you.
this helps the listeners. Yeah, hopefully it helps the viewers, because I mean we learn every day, don't we? And
With
I
capital
mean
L.
the absolutely the beauty of facilitation lies in its generosity.
Yeah.
uh, it is probably, see, I've worked as various capacities across my, I began life, I mean began professional life working for the Indian Navy, very different kind of a life. And then I worked in corporates, and I became an entrepreneur. Now I'm a full-time writer. So I've had the privilege of working with different kinds of groups and ecosystems, if you will. But facilitation stands out because it's a discipline which is absolutely embedded in generosity. Meaning, you can never tell what deep insight, what deep thought, or what deep nuance can come to you from anywhere at any moment.
Right.
I mean, and it comes from a space of sheer generosity.
Yeah.
That's the bit that really I really love. So irrespective of you're managing very senior people or you are talking to absolute new joiners in a company, we've got so much of collective wisdom, and facilitation as a discipline just unlocks those pearls of wisdom, and they just come to you if you are observant enough, if you are rooted enough, if you are still enough. uh, that's the part about facilitation which excites me the most, all these years, all these years. So that's how it's
Unlocking the group wisdom. That's an amazing piece to close with.
sure, sure.
Thank you for making time, Kinshuk. You have
Thank you.
stay
Yeah,
safe, take
thank you.
care, and looking forward to next time.
Absolutely, Greg. All the very best. This is a great, great initiative. I hope you get plenty of all other facilitators. Yeah, I'm going to tune in, and I'm going to be watching for the next drops that you make on your podcast. And all the very best. Yeah, all the very
Thank
best.
you. Thank you, Kinshuk.